This is an update on my challenge to myself to make 100% on a $100 account in 100 days. And this update is very embarrassing. If you remember from last time, or if you didn't see last time, I was up by over $60 after 25 days. So here I am after 30 days, and you can see the balance is down to $101.21. There are two things that I said last week. One was that I had been very lucky so far, and I was probably due for some bad luck, and it looks like that happened. And we'll get to the other one a little later. But to go through the trades that I took this week, it started out well. I traded a buy on Australian dollar here, and it managed to hit my take profit target. I made about 3% on that trade, and that was quite lucky because the price only just went above that before reversing and hasn't come back since. So if I'd had my target much higher than that, this would have turned into a loss. So that was quite a lucky trade. The next day I traded long on pound. I went in at this point, which is not strictly a point that I would. It wasn't crossing a pivot point line anywhere, but it looked like a strong move. So I went in here, and by the time I got to around here, it was beginning to look like that move was weakening. So rather than wait for it to hit my profit target, I closed out. And as you can see, it did reverse shortly after that and would have hit a stop loss if I hadn't closed out here. Of course, after that, it turned around and would easily have made my original target, but it would have hit the stop here somewhere if I hadn't done that. So small profit there, not a lot. 2 days later, I also took out a short trade on pound, which looked like a strong move here. It had crossed a pivot point, and I didn't quite pick that up in time, so I went in a little bit later, but not by too many points. I took the short trade, and then that looked like it was weakening, and so I closed out here, again, before it had reached my take profit point. And again, if I hadn't closed out, the price came back, would have crossed my stop loss before eventually moving on and taking out the take profit. Those were a couple of good trades. But in between those two trades is where things went wrong. And if you remember, one of the other things that I said last week was don't trade gold. And so my gold trades. There was a strong downward move here. Now gold has been trending up for a long time. So I think it's a good long-term upward trending commodity. But it had a strong pullback here and then began to reverse. And I thought, yes, that's just a pullback. I'll get in here because the move upwards is good. This just happened to be about the top of that retracement, and then the price went backwards. Now I didn't catch this straight away, and it got to a point where I was down here somewhere, and because gold is an expensive commodity, I was losing quite a bit. But I was still convinced here, and especially when this move started to happen, that this was just a retracement on the retracement and that it was going to continue its upward move. So I hung in, and eventually I closed out here with significant pain that actually lost everything that I had made over the 25 days before. So if I'd listened to my own advice, I would not have traded gold. I would have stuck with the symbols that move in much slower increments, and I wouldn't have been doing so badly. I did then finish the week well. I took a long trade on Japanese yen, and this time I did follow the formula. It fell below the pivot point, came back, so that looked like a reversion and a retracement. I traded, actually missed it a little bit, but I traded here, and this hit my take profit, and of course then continued on much further. So I could have taken that for a longer run, but I didn't know that, and remember that the Australian dollar early in the week had only just hit my target. So this was a small win to round out the week, which actually brought me up above $100, because before that, with the loss on gold, I was actually below my original starting balance. And that's about all I have for this week. I've learned not to trade gold, and I have learned to just follow my plan. I was actually trading gold earlier in the week simply because I couldn't find anything else that looked like it was worth trading. And I guess the important lesson to learn from that is, if there's nothing that looks good, it's better to not trade than to trade for a loss. So I now have 70 days left, and I'm going to be trying to make that up with various techniques. But I am going to be quite careful about them and not trade things that look like they could lose a lot of my equity. I'll be back next week with an update after day 35, although I might be a little bit late with it. I am traveling later in this week, so I may not even get a full week's trading in.